Okay, so hi Joey. Um,
Hey,
Good to touch base with you again. What I'm doing is it's been Mental Health Month last month, and this following month, this month October, it's Mental Health Week. It was Suicide Prevention Month last week, Mental Health Month this week. So I just really wanted to talk about mental health and ask you a couple of questions about mental health because it's really important we talk about it. So I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll ask you a few questions.
all right. Hey, I am Joey Pauga, and I do online reputation management. I live in Texas, been here for about 20 years. And yeah, so
Awesome.
excited to chat.
Awesome. Okay, so I just wanted to ask, what does mental health mean to you personally?
Oh,
Think about mental health.
so my personal thinking is it's mental toughness. Now, that might not be but that's personally to me, and
Yep.
let me explain what I mean by that. It's just in high school, I played basketball. And one of the things that our coach said was that just whoever wins or whoever is not tired in the last closing seconds or closing minutes of the game, that's the winners of the game. Defense wins games. And so he says, you got to be mentally tough. So that's for me, that's always what it's been. And that I got to have the mentality to finish the game, to play the same I was playing in the beginning. But at the
Mm.
same time, when I'm lazy, I don't feel like mowing the lawn. I gotta have that mental toughness to go mow the lawn. So I know that might not be right, but
Yeah,
that's my
no,
personal.
no, no, that's good. You know, we all look at mental health differently. And so it is, and this is part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want to know what people are thinking about mental health. We don't talk about it enough, I don't think. And so, everyone has a different understanding, opinion, thoughts about mental health. So that's good. So have you ever seen mental health impact people's lives, your lives, people's lives, work, family? Has that ever?
Um, I have just at church,
Hmm.
just because of my calling, I've seen people, we're trying to do emotional resilience. And that's why I said I recognize my understanding of mental health is different. But yeah, I've seen it that it does impact families and how they handle things,
Mm,
how they do things. But yeah,
yeah. And you're right, a lot of it relates to that resilience, isn't it? And I think in today's society, a lot of people have don't have as much resilience as they used to have, especially young people, I think.
and see, and that's what I mean by, for me, right, that mental toughness. To me, that's the resilience, right? If
Mm,
I need to self motivate myself to get up and go mow the lawn. To me, that's mental resilience because I'm lazy. I don't feel like doing it today. I don't feel like doing anything. Or then going back to the basketball, right? When I started the game, I was fresh. So I'm like dribbling, but now as the game is winding down, I'm tired. And if I give into that tiredness, then I don't play defense. Then I don't, I'm going to give up quickly on the loose ball. But I
mm,
have to have that mental toughness, that resilience to keep going, regardless of what's happening.
yeah. And you're right. I want to throw something out there. What about someone who is depressed or really anxious? Do you know people who, have you come across people who are really depressed? It's hard to motivate yourself when you're really depressed or you have high anxieties. I have a sister, my sister, who has high anxieties, and she can work herself up that she will physically be sick because she can't do something. Is that because her resilience, she's got not good resilience?
Well,
Yeah, your thoughts.
so,
Everyone's
okay. All right, good. So don't judge me. But
no?
so I have a friend. I have a friend. He had I never heard of an anxiety attack until I met him. And he said and I said, what causes that? And he says, it's from depression. I was like, well, we're all depressed. We all have anxiety. And he says, no, but I have it. It's a mental disorder that I have. I'm like, how can it be? I think this is the
No,
Samoan in
no,
me.
yes.
Because to me, I'm thinking, if I came to my dad, I said, Dad, I think I have mental health. My dad says, come here, say what? Say it again. Let me slap that mental health thought out of you. But I know today it's real. But that's what I was raised with,
Yeah.
right? That was my understanding. So it wasn't until I got to New Zealand, I was playing basketball. To me, that mental toughness changed a little bit. But today, as we're talking more about it, when that friend of mine told me that, here's what I said, and it ticked him off a little bit.
Yeah.
But I said, well, just get over it. Don't don't you think you need to just, have a good sleep, eat good food, and you'll get over your anxiety? Because I said, I have anxiety too, but I have to be mentally tough enough to get over it.
Mm.
I know, please, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but people said to me, or he said to me, no, this is a real thing. I didn't know.
Mm.
But
Mm.
anyway, so that's my
And I guess
uneducated.
you're right. We're brought up very differently. Like if I said to my dad, I'm feeling depressed, he'd say, go do the dishes, and we wouldn't talk about that again. That's in our culture. That's how we've been brought up. And this is the hardest thing that I see a lot of people in therapy and men especially who, when men come in, the first thing they say to me is, I'm really embarrassed to be here, or I shouldn't be here, or I was told I have to come because they don't want to think that they need, you know, because growing up, you went to a therapist because you were crazy. You didn't go to a therapist because you wanted to keep well and be healthy. And so, a lot of people who haven't experienced things, you're really fortunate that you haven't experienced a lot of trauma and mental health, like some of the clients that I see who just wish they could just get over it, but it's really hard. I had a Māori guy come in the other day and he, you know, had the tats and been in gangs and, real hard yakka, and he got beat up. He got beat up and he was crying every day and he said, I can't understand this. Why am I crying? Why can't I get over this? I've been through lots in my life, but this traumatized me and he
Mm.
could not get over it. And so I've been working with him to work through, it's triggered some of his trauma from when he was young, but when he was young, he cut it all out. And, we could say he was very resilient and pushed it aside. But that event of being beat up has triggered something in him that has opened up old wounds, and he just can't function. He can't go to work. He cries and he's really embarrassed because he can't get through it. And so that's a really difficult when you haven't, you've been fortunate you haven't seen or been through that. But there are people who just can't, wish they could just get over it, but just can't.
And the funny thing, that's what my friend had said to me. He says, Joey, I wish I could. And I said, well, why can't you? He goes, I just can't. I'm
Mm,
like, isn't it? Do you not just like every day you hit a reset? And he says, no, I don't know how to explain it to you. And he was frustrated with me, and I was frustrated with him for
yeah.
not just getting over it.
Mm.
And yeah, it's so crazy. That's why I'm saying it sounds my lack of understanding. But that was my very first uh, ever discussing what depression and anxiety is, that it's a real thing, that it's a mental
It's a disorder. Yeah.
block disorder. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
yeah. I didn't know it was a disorder because I thought we all have anxiety. We all get depressed at some time. But you know, my someone dies, my dog died, I was very depressed. And that's a real story. Not my dog, my pig, my pet pig. I was very depressed. But then I got over it in 2 days. I'm like, okay, time to move on.
Yeah.
That was me. So that's why I said to him, just
Mm.
sleep it off and you'll be okay.
And that is a what you were feeling was that sadness, those depressive thoughts and feelings, which is normal. But when it becomes not normal, is that continues, and it can continue for weeks and months and years. That feeling you had for 2 days, people can have that they can't move forward. And that's the difficulty. That's where depression sets in, that feeling continues. What you had, that feeling is normal. You should feel sad. You should feel upset. Something has happened. But when you hold that, what you had for 2 days, when people will experience that for years, and that's depression. So, yeah. But it's a hard one. It is a hard one. So, have you ever known anyone that has ended their life or wanted to end their life?
Man, I knew, well, it's going to be hard because, so after I told you I learned that for the first time, right? Then um, my own kids, I had to deal with them during their teenage years. My oldest two, they just, my son was like, man, he was just depressed and just had a thought and I didn't know. We talked about it. We went through, and that by then I had already understood, right? It is a real thing. It's a mental disorder. But I talked about it with him. But he's had from time to time he's had thoughts of, man, he didn't say suicide, but he just thought, man, is it worth it? Sometimes it's not worth it.
Mm.
He's had those,
Mhm.
and I've spent several nights with my kids just talking about it, just trying to figure out what it is. And just our biggest thing was just show love. And you're right. When I was thinking of we discussed what you call going to see counseling, and my first thought was, oh man, how is he gonna think? And he's thinking, man, I don't think that's gonna be good. It's kind of embarrassing,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't go because you're trying to be better. You're going because you're crazy.
Yeah.
Is my thinking.
Yeah, because that's how I was brought up too. And I explain a lot to people. I tell the story all the time. I said, if I break my leg, I've got my mom, she can help me. She'll give me painkillers, she'll put my leg up, she'll put ice on. She can do all of that, but I still have to go to a professional. I still have to go to a doctor to help me get to where I want to go. And it's the same when we're hurting in here and hurting in here. We've got our family, our friends, they can help us, but sometimes we need to go to a professional. And that's why we go to a therapist or someone that can help us work through those things. And it's something that, I try to talk a lot about mental health because it does affect a lot of people. And those thoughts about, yeah, is life worth it or not? You know, Lots of people have those thoughts, but it's the ones that have those thoughts and can't get it out of their head and are embarrassed to talk about it, embarrassed to say anything. And that's when we have people who suicide and we have no idea. When I
Mhm.
work in the hospital, a lot of our Polynesians, especially, I don't usually see them in the hospital until they've attempted suicide. A lot of people I see in the hospital because they're depressed, they're having really bad days, they're not coping. But I don't usually see a lot of Polynesians in that period. I see them after they've attempted. And then it all comes out that they're not coping and not doing things. And so that's why it's really important we talk about it. And as Polynesians, the best, what helps a lot is being able to talk about it with your family And what you said with your kids, you were up talking to them, talking through with them, and that's a awesome thing. But a lot of people, Polynesians, don't have someone to talk about or are embarrassed. They don't want to talk about those things.
I want to share this now that you said it, right? It was, I'm so glad, as you're pointing out, that my son came to me and my daughter came to me and my wife, they talked to my wife, and then so my son just said, I'm struggling with these thoughts. And I said, what do you mean? And so we sat down, we talked about it. And there was a night that we talked until 3 a.m. in the morning. And all we did was just discuss how he was feeling and why. And I realized as we're talking, that I'm not a counselor, but with a lot of prayer and a lot of thoughts. But I think after a few times we talked about it, he just said, yeah, no, he had a little thing at school that kind of like an episode that triggered it,
Mm,
like how you mentioned at the beginning. But luckily, because we were able to talk about it, and again, I'm glad that he came talk because I didn't know, first time teenage parent. My kids were back to back teenagers, and here I am. I'm like, what is it? Is this a thing? I didn't know this is a thing, because
mm,
I was never taught to grow up talking about it. We just, again, in Samoa, you're supposed to be macho. You're
yeah,
everything you gotta do. You just keep going. If you cut your leg, oh, it's bleeding. Well, just tie it up and
yeah,
keep going. There's no crying about it. If you come crying, it's like, well, let me cut the other side so you can give you something real to cry about.
yeah. So true. So
That was
true.
the that was the mentality I grew up with. So when my kids were talking to me, I was
Mm,
like, I was a little confused, and at first I'm like, this is real. But again, I'm glad you're mentioning it. So in a funny way, funny roundabout way, not funny, haha, but that as you're explaining it to me, I'm like, wow, I went through it not realizing
mm,
it
mm,
with with my kids. Again, luckily
yeah.
they came to me. And it's not like how you're saying you see them after. And I'm not saying they got to that point, but maybe they would have if we didn't talk about it.
And like you said before, if you went to your dad, come here and I'll slap you. So you wouldn't go to your dad about that. You're
Mm-mm.
you're very blessed in a family where you're open and can talk about that. There's still families today that cannot talk about it to their family, to their
Mm.
parents, or their parents are in that frame of mind. And who are they going to talk to? They can't tell their kids that's embarrassing or that's shameful. It's not, but in their thoughts and their minds, that's what it is. And so they don't talk about it, and that's why,
Mm.
yeah, really important that we talk to our kids when they're having an off day, checking in with them. What's happening today? How's school or how's uni or whatever it is. So just really important. So we have, like I said, we have Suicide Prevention Month was September. October, we have a Mental Health Week. Why do you think it's important we have these things? Is it important? Should we talk about it more? What do you think?
Well, and that's so again, I'll start, and I'm coming from my experience. Growing up, nothing. This is not important. This was not, but Suzanne, when I encountered it with my kids, right? So I parent a little bit differently now with my two younger kids. And that is, um, these are back then, oh my gosh, it's gonna sound really bad, but I never talked about it because I'm too, we have to be macho. And so with my kids, it's a joke in our family. We get, oh, my son's going to do something. I said, I can do it better because I have bigger muscles, right? And that was always the thing we talked about. And I think in doing that, it didn't foster that environment of being open to talk. Whereas on the other side, so truly, actually, if I back up a little bit, it's my mom that would say, "Come here, let me slap that depression out of you." But my dad was the one that always gave us the voice. Now, my mom, she was good too, but my dad was the one that always gave us the voice, meaning if we wanted to talk about something, he always let us talk about it.
Mm,
And that's what with my kids. So that's why how I brought up my kids was it we can talk everything. You can talk to me about anything about. girls or boys or sex, whatever it is, come and talk to me. To answer your question, giving you that background is yes, I think it is important. Why? Because if there's different stages and stage one is the lowest and two, three, four, and four is now you're thinking suicidal. I don't want it to ever get there, but if we don't talk about it, then
Mm,
I think it could get there.
yeah.
But I think if you talk about it, it gives it that stopping point. I'm not saying it's going to be the same for everyone, but I think that just from my experience now having had my two older kids and we talked about it, we were very open. And my kids have always been open with my kids, them with me as well. There were some things they didn't want to share with me, I recognize, because they'll tell the other kid and then the other kid will come tell me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we should talk about it
Mm,
because my experience growing up is very different
mm,
from how we are here today, where I live today. And I think, and I don't know anything, right? So this is not my expertise, but just from what I'm seeing from my own kids, also from my youngest son, I think having a phone and having social media may be contributing into it to these because they're seeing other kids that are better than them or that are doing something that's
mm,
better than what he's doing, right? And so these little things are I think are thoughts that they're having um, because of what they see, and so therefore knowing that I talk to my kids. I say this is what we need to do here, and then so I'm constantly talking about it with my kids because I know my kids all have phones, even my youngest son. But in knowing that, I educate him. I don't just give him a phone, and I get the rules. I'm not saying it's perfect, but my point is I'm trying to circumvent the issues that could result from having it. Oh, I know I kind of went roundabout.
no, you're right. I see a lot of people in therapy that social media has done a lot of damage. Social media is can be really good and it can be detrimental to their people's mental health. And you're right. There is, you look on social media and everyone's having fun and having the time of their life, and my life's not like that. That's not fair. How come they get everything? And it's perception, what we see. We post about all these wonderful things we do. I don't post about I'm having a breakdown and I can't find something to wear today and my car's not starting, and I don't post about that kind of thing. But and so a lot of times, especially with young people, they are looking what everyone else has and what they don't have, and there's that comparison a lot of times. I even have kids who I had a boy the other day, he told me he had 483 friends. And I went, 483? And he pointed to his computer and he says, I've got 483 friends. And I said, how many of those friends do you see face to face? And he said, none. So this
Mm.
boy is isolated. I had to go to his house to see him for therapy because he couldn't come out of the house. He has
Wow.
all these friends, but he doesn't have a face-to-face friend, and he stopped going to school. So it's really
Um,
difficult what um, our our lives are very different. Our lives, I think growing up, we had a really hard life. Our kids today have a hard life too, but a different hard, you know. And so
I agree.
the impacts of it, yeah. So one last question. What message would you share with others about looking after their mental health?
Well, again, from my perspective and from my background now, and now having had raised kids, I think the best thing to do is to be open and to talk with the kids. So I reserved a kid or a kid. We call it our. My wife instituted a dating, spending time with the kids at least once a week. And I think that was a really good idea because it drew me closer to both my girls. My girls were naturally close to my wife, and my son was mama's boy. So I had to develop to do these things. I had to go on a date with them every week to develop that closeness with them. And in doing that, that's what allowed them. And that we started that when my kids were young. When I say young, my daughter was 5. My oldest daughter was 5. So my son was 3. And I spent these one-on-one times with them. 10 years later, when my daughter is 15, we already had this connection that we built. And then my son was 13. It was a little bit harder for my son during his teenage years, but because we had that connection, and we had that time reserved on a weekly basis, that's what helped. And so for me, I think spending time with your kids, or let's say your loved ones, right? But from my standpoint, with your kids, fostering that openness so that they can share things with you
Mm.
that maybe they wouldn't usually do. And one of my here's the funny things, my questions, and you said it on a weekly basis when we chat, we just hang out, like, and I'll say something like this: how's school? And they'll tell me. And then I'll say, who's your friends at school? And they have to name me at least 3 people. And I'll say, how's church? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, who's your friends at church? And they'll have to name me at least one person. And then my next question is, are you bullying anyone? And I define the word bully to my kids. And they'll say no. And then I'll say, are you being bullied by anyone?
Mm.
And one time, one of my daughters said, my son goes, yeah. And when she described it, I'm like, okay, well, let's redefine bully. That's they're pestering you, they're being annoying. And I found out the situation. She was annoying them as well. I said, let's redefine bully. And I said, this is pestering, this is bullying. And but if we didn't do that, and I credit that to my wife for setting that up, to spend time with my kids. If we didn't do that, I don't think my kids would be open. And today we have our weekly calls with my kids, even though they're all out of the house. And we just talk about how life is, spiritual things, what we learned. But that openness continues today.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that is really important, that openness and having those conversations and being able to talk about, because growing up, even with me, my dad, he was very Samoan and my mum is Australian. And so it was my mum that would say, "Oh, Dad loves you. Dad," she would talk on behalf of him. And he found it hard to talk about emotions. If he
Mm.
didn't like what I was wearing, I would know. I remember getting dressed and putting on a new denim dress skirt that I bought, and I bought, so I was like 19, and I come out for church and he'd say, "Go take that off. Go change." So I would hear when he didn't like something. If he liked something, he wouldn't say anything. And that's how I knew. And so, I think growing up, talking about emotions and feelings, a lot of our Pacifica come from an environment where we didn't talk about the emotions and feelings. I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling depressed or anxious. We didn't talk about those things.
Well, if I could just interject one more quick thing now that you said that, you're right. You know, and I'm sure every Samoan family is different, but in my Samoan family, like today, I say I love you to my kids and to my wife, like a lot. Like just as they're going to bed, I love you. In our family, to your point, it's like you don't talk about those things in Samoan. Oh, you don't say I love you. Ooh, you don't hold hands. Oh,
Yeah.
it's just, and it went like that. My wife pointed that out to me when we were dating. She goes, he didn't want to hold my hand in front of everyone.
Mm.
Like, because it's ew.
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I thought, ew. But I need to remove that so that my kids can don't say ew. They will come and talk to me and say, and yet my girls today, and I'm glad, right? They'll just say, hey, Dad, I love you. They'll just call me and say, I love you, Dad. Like,
Yeah.
thank you. But we don't talk emotions in Samoa.
Yeah. And I have 7 boys and my one girl. And every time I ring them, we always end with, "I love you." Every conversation I have with my kids, every time they leave my house, they give me a kiss and tell me they love me, and vice versa. But it's something that I talk about all the time with them. It's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel upset, but talk about it. And don't get me wrong, my boys don't talk about a lot of things. They don't, still won't talk to me about things. Um, but they will tell me they love me, and I will tell them I love them every time I talk to them, every time I text them. That's my I love you is my text. And if on the phone, that's how we end our conversations always. So
That's awesome.
it's really important.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for making the time to chat with me about it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you've taken. Um,
You're welcome.
now.
Thank you.
Okay.